My name is Rachel, and I'm 34 years old. 3 weeks ago, I stood at the altar of St. Michael's Cathedral, wearing a bridesmaid dress I'd paid for myself, watching my younger sister Emma prepare to say her vows. The pews were filled with 200 guests, white roses cascaded from every surface, and a string quartet played softly in the background. It was supposed to be the most beautiful day of Emma's life. But as I stood there, gripping my bouquet of pale pink peonies, I knew exactly what I was about to do. What none of them knew, not my mother in her champagne-colored Vera Wang dress, not my father dabbing his eyes in the front row, not Emma in her $12,000 gown, was that I had discovered something 48 hours earlier that had shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. My mother had emptied my entire savings account. $47,000. Every penny I had saved over the past 6 years, gone. Transferred to pay for this wedding. This wedding I was never even asked to contribute to. And what I did next, in front of God and everyone my family had ever wanted to impress, would be talked about in our town for years to come. I need to tell you this story from the beginning, because what happened at that altar didn't come out of nowhere. It was the final chapter of a lifetime of being invisible, of being the reliable one, of being the daughter who could always be counted on to sacrifice without complaint. But before I take you back, I want to pause for just a moment. If this story resonates with you, please take a second to like and subscribe. I'd love to know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Because I have a feeling some of you know exactly what it's like to be the family member everyone takes for granted. Let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up in Riverside, Connecticut, one of those picture-perfect New England towns where everyone's lawn is immaculate and everyone's family looks happy from the outside. My parents, Patricia and Robert Sullivan, were pillars of the community. My father was a partner at a prestigious law firm in Stamford, and my mother, well, my mother's full-time job was making sure everyone knew how successful we were. Our house was a 4,000-square-foot colonial on Maple Lane, painted white with black shutters, surrounded by hydrangeas that my mother obsessed over every summer. From the outside, we looked like a family straight out of a Ralph Lauren advertisement. The reality was something different entirely. My sister Emma was born when I was 4 years old, and from the moment she arrived, it was as if someone had flipped a switch in my mother's heart. I remember the day they brought her home from the hospital. I was standing at the window in my little yellow dress, the one with the daisies on it, waiting excitedly to meet my new baby sister. But when they walked through the door, my mother looked at me and said, "Not now, Rachel," and brushed past me to take Emma upstairs. I stood there in the foyer, watching them disappear, and even at 4 years old, I understood something had changed. I just didn't know it would never change back. Emma was beautiful. She had golden curls where I had mousy brown hair that never did what my mother wanted. She had big blue eyes like my mother, while I had inherited my father's forgettable hazel. By the time I was 7 and Emma was 3, the pattern was already firmly established. Emma was the precious one, the talented one, the one with potential. I was the dependable one, the helper, the one who could be trusted to handle things on my own because Emma needed more attention. My mother never said she loved Emma more. She didn't have to. It was in every choice, every allocation of time and money and energy. It was in the way she photographed every moment of Emma's life while my school plays went unattended. It was in the designer clothes Emma wore while I got hand-me-downs from our cousin in Hartford. It was in the way my mother's face lit up when Emma walked into a room, a light that never seemed to switch on for me. The first time I consciously recognized the disparity, I was 11 years old. It was September 4, 1999, the first day of 6th grade. I remember because I had saved my birthday money all summer to buy a specific backpack, this really cool JanSport with purple and turquoise swirls. All my friends had JanSports, and I had never had one. When I showed my mother the $42 I'd saved, she smiled and said, "That's wonderful, Rachel, but Emma needs new dance shoes. Her recital is coming up." And just like that, my money was Emma's money. I went to 6th grade with my old backpack, the one with the broken zipper that I had to safety pin shut. When I got home that day, my mother didn't even ask how school had gone. She was too busy showing Emma's new ballet slippers to her friend Linda over coffee. I told myself it didn't matter. That's what I always told myself. It didn't matter. By high school, I had perfected the art of not mattering. I got straight A's because it was expected, but there were no celebrations when my report cards came in. When Emma made the junior varsity cheerleading squad as a freshman, my mother threw a party. An actual party, with catering and a congratulations banner. That same month, I was accepted into the National Honor Society. My mother said, "That's nice, honey, can you help me plan Emma's celebration?" I did, of course. I always helped. I organized the catering order, addressed the invitations, picked up the cake from the bakery. At the party, I served drinks while my mother introduced Emma to all her friends as my little superstar. I remember standing in the kitchen that night, loading the dishwasher, when my father came in to get another bottle of wine. He patted me on the shoulder and said, "You're a good kid, Rachel. You know that, right?" And I nodded, because what else was I supposed to do? But even then, at 15, I knew good kid meant something different than superstar. Good kid meant useful. Superstar meant loved. By high school, I had perfected the art of not mattering. I got straight A's because it was I could give you 100 examples from my teenage years. The time I needed $300 for a school trip to Washington, D.C., a trip that was educational and meaningful, and my mother said we couldn't afford it because Emma's cheerleading camp was that same month. I didn't go to Washington. I stayed home and helped my mother pack Emma's trunk for camp. The time I asked to take driver's ed at 16, like all my friends were doing, and my mother said I'd have to wait because Emma needed braces and it was too much money at once. I finally got my license at 17 and a half, borrowing my best friend's mother's car to practice because my parents' cars were always being used to drive Emma to practice or competitions or social events. The time I won a creative writing award my junior year, a significant honor that could have helped with college applications, and my mother didn't come to the ceremony because Emma had a sore throat and needed her. I accepted my award from a stranger and walked off stage to a room full of other students' proud parents, while my seat in the audience sat empty. I told myself it didn't matter. Emma was younger. Emma needed more. Emma was special. I was just Rachel. When it came time for college, the pattern calcified into something permanent. I was a strong student. My guidance counselor said I could aim for excellent schools, maybe even Ivy League with some luck. But my parents sat me down in the living room, the one with the cream-colored sofas that were only for guests, and explained the situation. "Honey," my mother said, "Emma's going to need significant resources for her future. She has real talent, she could go professional with her dancing. We need to be strategic about our finances. Your father is going to take a package to manage tuition costs. We need you to be practical." Practical meant community college for 2 years, then transferring to a state school. Practical meant no dorms, no campus life, no experiences that other kids got to have. Practical meant living at home, commuting to class, and continuing to help my mother with everything she needed while Emma got to focus on her dancing full-time. My father wouldn't meet my eyes during that conversation. He just kept cleaning his glasses, over and over, like he was trying to polish away the shame. But he didn't say anything to contradict my mother. He never did. Here's the thing about growing up as the invisible child. You learn to make yourself valuable in whatever ways you can. I worked part-time throughout community college, then full-time while finishing my bachelor's degree at the University of Connecticut. I graduated with a degree in accounting, not because I was passionate about numbers, but because it was practical. That word again. I got a job at a mid-size firm in Hartford, and I was good at it. I was reliable, detail-oriented, and I never complained about staying late. In other words, I was exactly what my family had trained me to be. After graduation, Emma continued to live at home. Her dancing career hadn't exactly materialized, but my mother had a new narrative ready. Emma was exploring her options. Emma was finding herself. Emma was too sensitive to be pushed into the working world before she was ready. At 23, Emma finally got a job at a boutique in town. She lasted 4 months before quitting because her manager was mean to her. At 25, she tried real estate, which my parents funded with courses and licensing fees and a new wardrobe. She sold one house in 18 months, then gave up because the hours were too demanding. Through it all, she lived at home, ate food my parents paid for, drove a car my parents maintained, and was treated like a princess in waiting. Meanwhile, I had moved into a small apartment in New Haven, was paying all my own bills, and was slowly building a career that I could be proud of. My parents never visited my apartment. Not once. In 7 years. The financial requests started small. I was 25 years old, November 21st, 3 days before Thanksgiving. I remember because I was making a pie to bring home for the holiday, and my kitchen smelled like butter and maple syrup. My phone rang, and it was my mother. "Rachel, sweetheart," she said, in that voice she only used when she wanted something. "We're in a bit of a tight spot. Your father had some unexpected expenses at the firm, and Emma needs new headshots for her acting portfolio." Yes, acting was the new career path that month. "Could you help out, just this once? Just until things settle down?" She asked for $500. It was a lot for me at the time, but she was my mother. I told myself it was an emergency. I told myself families help each other. I transferred the money that night. She never said thank you. She just said I knew I could count on you. That phrase would become a recurring theme in my life. Just until things settled down became a permanent state. Over the next 8 years, the requests became regular, then expected, then demanded. At first it was small amounts, 200 here, 300 there. Emma needs new tires. Emma's phone broke. Emma has a medical bill. Gradually, the amounts increased. Emma needed a security deposit for an apartment she was getting, finally moving out at 28. That was $2,000. The apartment lasted 5 months before she moved back home, and I never saw that deposit returned. Emma decided to go back to school for graphic design. That was $4,000 for courses she dropped after 1 semester. Emma crashed her car, not seriously, but the repairs were $800 and the deductible was $500. Somehow, I was the one who paid both. By the time I was 30, I had given my family over $40,000. I knew the exact amount because I was an accountant. I kept records. It was pathological, probably, but I had a spreadsheet. Every request, every amount, every date, every excuse. Sometimes I would look at that spreadsheet late at night, in my small apartment, alone, and I would feel something I couldn't quite name. Not anger, not yet. Just a kind of sad confusion. Why was this my responsibility? Why was I always the one who had to help? But then I would close the laptop and tell myself the same thing I always told myself. They're family. This is what family does. Emma needs more than I do. I told myself I was being generous, not exploited. I told myself the imbalance was temporary. I told myself that someday, somehow, it would all even out. It never did. Okay, I need to pause here for a second. I want to ask you something. Have you ever kept track of how much money you've given to family members who never seem to pay you back? I'm genuinely curious. Type in the comments, yes or no. And if this story is already hitting close to home, please hit that like button so more people can find it. Because I know I'm not the only one who's lived this reality. The moment I started to wake up came unexpectedly. I was 31 years old, March 15, 2019. The Ides of March, I remember thinking later, how appropriate. I was sitting in the office of a therapist named Dr. Catherine Moore. I hadn't sought her out for family issues. I'd gone because I was having panic attacks at work, and my primary care doctor had suggested I talk to someone. I'd been seeing Dr. Moore for about 2 months, mostly discussing work stress and my tendency to take on too much. That day, somehow, we ended up talking about why I took on too much. "Tell me about your role in your family growing up," Dr. Moore said. She was a small woman with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She had a way of asking questions that made you feel like she already knew the answers and was just waiting for you to figure them out. "I'm the oldest," I said. "I have a younger sister. We're close." "Are you?" she asked. And something about the way she asked it made me pause. I started to describe my relationship with Emma, and with my mother, and somewhere in the middle of explaining why it was totally normal that I had paid for Emma's car insurance for 2 years, Dr. Moore held up her hand. "Rachel," she said, "what you're describing is not sibling closeness. It's exploitation. Do you understand the difference?" I didn't, not really. Not yet. But that word, exploitation, lodged itself in my brain like a splinter. Over the following months, Dr. Moore helped me see patterns I had been blind to my entire life. She helped me understand that I had been conditioned since childhood to be a provider, a solver, a giver, while receiving almost nothing in return. She helped me see that my mother's constant requests weren't emergencies. They were a systematic pattern of treating me as a resource to be extracted from. She helped me understand that my panic attacks weren't really about work. They were about a lifetime of suppressing my needs in service of others who didn't appreciate me. It was painful, this awakening. There were sessions where I sobbed until I couldn't breathe. There were nights when I lay awake questioning everything I thought I knew about my family, about myself, about love. But slowly, incrementally, I started to change. The first time I said no was June 8, 2019. My mother called with another request. Emma's birthday was coming up, and she wanted to throw a party. Could I contribute, say, $1,000? And for the first time in my life, I said, "I'm sorry, I can't do that." The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. Then my mother laughed, a brittle, uncomfortable sound. "What do you mean you can't? You always help out for family occasions." "I'm not able to contribute financially right now," I said. My voice was shaking, but I kept going. "I'm sure you and Dad can figure something out." The conversation that followed was short and cold. My mother didn't yell. She did something worse. She became icy, disappointed, martyred. "Fine," she said. "I guess Emma will just have to have a smaller celebration. I'm sure she'll understand that her sister didn't want to help." When I hung up, I was trembling. I called Dr. Moore that afternoon, terrified that I had done something terrible. She told me I had done something brave. The party went on without my contribution. Emma never mentioned it to me, which suggested my mother hadn't actually told her I'd said no. Which suggested my mother had found the money somewhere else all along. Which suggested, as Dr. Moore pointed out in our next session, that maybe my money had never been necessary. Maybe it had just been easy. Over the next 2 years, I slowly reduced my financial support. It wasn't a clean break. Sometimes I still said yes. Old habits are hard to unlearn. But I started setting limits. I stopped answering calls immediately. I stopped feeling guilty when I couldn't or wouldn't help. My spreadsheet stopped growing as quickly. And something interesting happened. My family stopped calling as much. Turns out, when you remove the money from the equation, you find out pretty quickly what the relationship was actually built on. Phone calls from my mother, which used to come twice a week minimum, dwindled to once a month. Emma texted occasionally, but only when she needed something. My father, who had never been much of a communicator anyway, faded into near total silence. I told myself this was normal. That adult children often drift from their parents. That everyone was just busy. But in my heart, I knew the truth. Without my financial usefulness, I had become invisible to them again. Just like when I was a child. Then Emma announced her engagement. It was October 3, 2021. I found out through Instagram before anyone even called me. Emma had posted a photo of herself with a beautiful ring, tagged with her boyfriend, now fiancé, Marcus. He proposed. She had written, with about 14 exclamation points and heart emojis. I stared at the photo for a long time. Emma looked radiant, genuinely happy, and despite everything, I felt a small flutter of hope. Maybe this could be a turning point. Maybe I could be a real part of my sister's life, not just a funding source. Maybe planning a wedding together could bring us closer. My mother called 3 hours later. Rachel, she said, have you seen Emma's news? Isn't it wonderful? We're going to have a wedding to plan. Notice that I would soon learn exactly what that meant. For the first few months, I was included in everything. My mother created a group chat called Emma's Big Day. With me, her, Emma, and Emma's maid of honor, her best friend Ashley. There were constant discussions about venues, colors, dresses, flowers. I offered opinions when asked, which wasn't often. I made suggestions that were mostly ignored. After that conversation, things changed subtly but noticeably. I was still in the group chat, but I was no longer consulted on decisions. When I offered opinions, they were met with silence or quick changes of subject. I was invited to the dress shopping trip, but I wasn't asked to help choose the dress. They went with the $12,000 one, by the way. I found out through Instagram. The wedding was planned for September of 2023, a grand affair at St. Michael's Cathedral followed by a reception at the Riverside Country Club. My mother threw herself into the planning with an energy I had never seen from her. This was her project, her masterpiece, the social event that would cement her status in town. No expense was spared. The venue alone was $40,000 for the reception. The flowers were quoted at $15,000. The photographer, the caterer, the band, the cake, the favors, the linens, the lighting, all of it added up to what I estimated was close to $200,000 for the full event. I asked my father once, during a rare phone call, how they were affording it. He sighed heavily. Your mother has it under control, he said. Which meant he didn't know, or he didn't want to know. I should tell you about my savings account. After years of giving money away to my family, I had made a conscious decision to start building security for myself. Starting in 2020, I had been putting away $1,500 a month, every month, into a savings account at a regional bank. Not my regular bank where I did my everyday banking, but a separate institution, specifically so I wouldn't be tempted to dip into it. The account was my safety net. My emergency fund. My future down payment on a house. My freedom. By the summer of 2023, I had $47,322 in that account. I checked the balance occasionally, always with a little thrill of pride. I had built this myself. No one had helped me. This was proof that I could take care of myself, that I didn't need anyone else. What I didn't know was that my mother had access to that account. Here's what I later pieced together. When I was 22 years old, just starting out, my mother had helped me set up my first savings account. I don't even remember the details now. She had co-signed something, or been listed as a joint holder for overdraft protection, or some other excuse that had seemed reasonable at the time. I had long since forgotten about that account. But when I opened the new savings account at that regional bank, I used the same identifying information. The same social security number, obviously. The same address. What I didn't realize was that my mother, with her name still attached to my financial profile from that old account, could contact the bank and request access. I don't know exactly what she said to them. I don't know what documentation she provided or what lies she told. I know that in August of 2023, 3 weeks before Emma's wedding, my mother walked into a branch of that regional bank and convinced them to give her access to my account. And then she transferred every penny of my $47,000 to herself. I didn't discover what had happened until September 1st, a Friday, exactly 2 weeks before the wedding. I was at work, reviewing quarterly reports for a client, when I got an alert on my phone. My bank app, the one for my everyday checking account, was showing an unusual notification. A transfer had been flagged, something about linked accounts. Confused, I logged into my savings account for the first time in several weeks. The balance showed $4.83. The blood drained from my face. I stared at the screen, certain I was reading it wrong. I closed the app and reopened it. I refreshed the page. I logged out and logged back in. The balance remained the same. $4.83. I clicked on the transaction history, my hands shaking so badly I could barely navigate the screen. And there it was. August 22, 2023. Transfer to Sullivan Family Trust. $47,317. I don't remember the rest of that workday. I must have functioned somehow, because I didn't get fired. But my mind was completely blank, white noise and static. I drove home on autopilot. I sat in my apartment staring at the wall for what might have been hours. Sullivan Family Trust. My parents had a family trust set up years ago for estate planning purposes. I had never been included in it, another thing I hadn't questioned at the time. My mother had access to that trust. My mother had taken my money and put it in the trust. And then, almost certainly, had used the trust to pay for Emma's wedding. I called the bank the next morning, first thing, Saturday, September 2nd. The branch manager was apologetic but unhelpful. The account had been accessed by an authorized user, she said. The documentation was in order. There was nothing the bank could do. I demanded to see the documentation. After much back and forth, they finally agreed to show me. There was my mother's signature. Patricia Sullivan, joint account holder, added to the account on July 28. 3 weeks before the transfer. I found out later that she had contacted the bank, claiming to be helping her adult daughter with financial planning. She had provided documents from that old account we'd opened together, documents that were over a decade old but apparently still valid. She had answered security questions using information she knew about me, my childhood address, my first pet's name, my mother's maiden name. Her own maiden name. And just like that, she had inserted herself into my financial life and helped herself to everything I had. I thought about calling my mother immediately. I thought about driving to her house and screaming at her. I thought about calling the police. But something Dr. Moore had said to me once came back to me in that moment. When you're dealing with manipulative people, she had told me, your first instinct will usually be to confront them directly. But that's what they're expecting. That's what they're prepared for. They have their excuses ready. They have their guilt trips loaded. They know exactly how to make you feel like you're the problem. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is take time to plan your response. So I didn't call. I didn't drive over. I didn't scream. Instead, I sat in my apartment, and I thought. And slowly, a plan began to form. The next 2 weeks were the most difficult of my life. I had to pretend everything was normal. I had to attend the rehearsal dinner. I had to smile at my mother while knowing what she had done. I had to listen to Emma chatter about the wedding, about how everything was going to be so perfect, about how lucky she was to have such a supportive family. Meanwhile, I was gathering evidence. I requested complete transaction records from my bank. I obtained copies of the authorization documents my mother had used. I consulted with a lawyer, quietly, about my options. The lawyer, a woman named Susan Chen, was blunt. What your mother did may technically be legal, she said. The bank accepted her authorization. Type yes or no in the comments. I want to know what you would have done. And if you're dying to see what happens next, make sure you're subscribed. The morning of September 16, 2023, dawned clear and beautiful. Perfect wedding weather. I woke up at 6, showered, and began getting ready with mechanical precision. My bridesmaid dress was dusty rose, fitted and elegant. My hair was done at the salon, soft waves pinned back on one side. My makeup was flawless, natural but polished. I looked like exactly what I was supposed to be, the supportive older sister, happy to play her part on Emma's special day. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock. The bridal party gathered at the church at 2 for photographs. I smiled. I posed. I helped adjust Emma's train. I complimented my mother's dress. No one noticed anything different about me. Why would they? I had been performing this role my entire life. Inside, my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. In my clutch, I had a single folded piece of paper. A summary of what my mother had done. The amount. The dates. The evidence. The plan was simple. During the reception, there would be a time for toasts. The maid of honor would speak first, then the best man, then family members if they wished. I had asked my mother weeks ago if I could say a few words at the reception. She had been surprised, I think, since I wasn't known for public speaking. But she had agreed, perhaps thinking it would look good, the estranged older sister making a gesture of unity. What she didn't know was that I had no intention of waiting for the reception. The ceremony began at 4 o'clock precisely. The church was packed. 200 guests filled the pews, dressed in their finest, clutching programs printed on cream-colored cardstock. The flowers were exquisite, white roses and gardenias, their scent heavy in the air. The string quartet played Pachelbel's canon as the bridal party processed down the aisle. I walked slowly, keeping perfect pace, my bouquet held at exactly the right angle. I took my place at the front of the church, on the left side of the altar, facing the congregation. Emma came down the aisle on my father's arm, looking like something out of a fairy tale. The congregation stood. My mother was already crying, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. The priest welcomed everyone. He spoke about love, about commitment, about the joining of 2 families. And then he asked the question that changed everything. He said, if there is anyone present who knows of any reason why this couple should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. In movies, this moment is always silent. No one ever actually speaks. But I had spent 34 years holding my peace. And I was done. I stepped forward, out of the line of bridesmaids, and I said, I need to say something. The church went absolutely silent. Not a whisper, not a rustle, nothing. 200 pairs of eyes fixed on me. Emma's face went pale. Marcus looked confused. My mother's expression shifted from shock to horror to fury in the space of about 2 seconds. Rachel, my mother hissed. What are you doing? I ignored her. I turned to face the congregation, and I spoke in a clear, calm voice that didn't shake at all. I said, I want to make it clear that I have no objection to this marriage. Emma and Marcus love each other, and I wish them every happiness. But I cannot stand here, in a church, surrounded by people who believe in truth and justice, and pretend that everything is fine in this family. Because it is not. There was a murmur from the congregation. People were looking at each other, uncertain. The priest seemed frozen, unsure of the protocol for this situation. My father had gone very still in his seat. I continued speaking. I said, 3 weeks ago, my mother accessed my personal savings account without my knowledge or permission. She transferred $47,317 into a family trust and used that money to pay for this wedding. I gestured at the flowers, the altar, the beautiful decorations surrounding us. All of this, I said, was paid for with my life savings. Money I had worked for over 6 years. Money I had earned at a job that leaves me exhausted every night. Money I had saved for my future, for a house, for security. And my mother took it without asking. The murmur became louder. I saw people whispering to each other. I saw some guests looking at my mother, who had turned an alarming shade of purple. Emma was crying now, tears running down her face, and I felt a pang of genuine sorrow. I hadn't wanted to hurt my sister. But I couldn't carry this secret anymore. That's not true, my mother said loudly. She stepped forward, out of her pew, into the aisle. That's absolutely not true. Rachel, I don't know what kind of breakdown you're having, but this is not the time or place. I reached into my clutch and pulled out the folded piece of paper. Actually, I said, I have documentation. Would you like me to read it aloud? The church had become something close to chaos. The priest was trying to restore order, asking everyone to please remain calm. Marcus was holding Emma, looking completely bewildered. My father had his head in his hands. And my mother, my beautiful, polished, picture-perfect mother, was unraveling before everyone's eyes. You ungrateful little bitch, she spat at me. The words echoed in the church, shocking in their vulgarity. After everything we've done for you. After all the sacrifices this family made for you. I stayed calm. I had practiced this in my head 1,000 times. I said, what sacrifices, exactly? The sacrifice of taking my birthday money for Emma's dance shoes? The sacrifice of denying me driver's ed so Emma could have braces? The sacrifice of making me work through college while Emma lived at home rent-free for 8 years? I kept my voice steady, factual, almost gentle. I've kept records, I said. I've been giving this family money since I was 25 years old. Over the past 11 years, I have contributed approximately $89,000 in direct financial support. That's not counting this latest theft, which brings the total to over $136,000. I have never once received anything in return. Not help, not support, not even gratitude. My mother was shaking now, whether with rage or some other emotion, I couldn't tell. She tried to speak, but my father stood up. He walked into the aisle and put his hand on her arm. Patricia, he said quietly. Enough. She turned on him. Don't you dare, she said. Don't you dare take her side. My father looked at me, really looked at me, for what felt like the first time in years. His eyes were wet. Rachel, he said. I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know. I believed him. My father had always been passive, absent, willfully oblivious to my mother's machinations. But I didn't think he was actively cruel. I think he just didn't want to see what was happening in his own family. I nodded at him. I know, Dad, I said. But that doesn't make it okay. Emma suddenly broke away from Marcus and rushed toward me. She was sobbing, her makeup ruined, her beautiful dress swishing against the stone floor of the church. Rachel, please, she said. Please, can we talk about this later? This is my wedding. This is supposed to be my day. I looked at my little sister, the golden child, the superstar, and I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Anger, yes. But also pity. And love. Despite everything, I still loved her. I said, Emma, I'm sorry. I truly am. I didn't want to do this here. But I've spent my entire life putting your needs ahead of mine. I've spent my entire life being invisible so you could shine. And when Mom stole my savings to pay for your wedding, I realized that nothing is ever going to change unless I make it change. I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this because I'm drowning, and I'm not willing to drown anymore. Emma stared at me, her face crumpling. I didn't know, she whispered. About the money. I didn't know she took it. I searched her face and saw genuine shock. Maybe she hadn't known. Maybe she had been as oblivious as our father. Or maybe she had simply never asked where the wedding money was coming from, because in our family, money always appeared when Emma needed it. That was just how things worked. My mother made one final attempt to salvage the situation. She pushed past my father and addressed the congregation. I'm so sorry you all had to witness this, she said, her voice dripping with wounded dignity. My daughter is clearly having a mental health crisis. We'll get her the help she needs. But please, let's not let this ruin Emma's beautiful day. Can we please just continue with the ceremony? There was a long, uncomfortable pause. People shifted in their seats. Some were looking at my mother with sympathy, buying her narrative. Others were looking at me, uncertain. The paper was still in my hand. I hadn't read it yet. And then something unexpected happened. Susan Chen, my lawyer, stood up in one of the back pews. She was wearing a simple gray dress, looking every inch the professional. I had invited her to the wedding, just in case. I wasn't sure if she would come, but she had. "Mrs. Sullivan," Susan said, her voice carrying clearly through the church. "I'm an attorney. Your daughter has shared documentation with me regarding the unauthorized transfer of funds from her savings account. I've reviewed the bank records and the authorization documents you used to access her account. There is sufficient evidence here for a civil lawsuit, and potentially for criminal charges of fraud." I stood there, watching my mother's face, watching the exact moment she realized she wasn't going to be able to talk her way out of this. She looked at Susan, at the congregation, at me. And finally, for the first time in my life, she had nothing to say. The wedding did not continue that day. Marcus, to his credit, spoke privately with Emma for about 10 minutes, then announced to the guests that the ceremony would be postponed. He was kind about it, apologizing for the inconvenience, thanking everyone for coming. The guests filed out in stunned silence, whispering to each other, sneaking glances at my mother as they passed. The reception at the country club was cancelled. Or rather, it was converted into a kind of informal gathering, since the caterers had already prepared everything. I wasn't there for that part. I left the church immediately after Marcus's announcement, Susan by my side. We went to a coffee shop a few blocks away, a quiet place with brick walls and soft jazz playing in the background. I ordered a chamomile tea. My hands were shaking. Did I do the right thing? I asked Susan. She looked at me with something like respect. "That's not really for me to say," she answered. "But I can tell you that I've practiced family law for 20 years, and I've never seen anyone stand up for themselves the way you just did. In my experience, most people in your situation just keep taking it, year after year, until there's nothing left of them. You decided to stop. That takes courage." I sat there, holding my tea, and I let myself feel what I was feeling. There was grief, for the family I had wished I had. There was fear, about what came next. But underneath all of it, there was something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. The fallout in the days and weeks that followed was significant. Emma and Marcus did eventually get married, about 6 months later. It was a smaller ceremony, at a courthouse, with only close friends in attendance. I wasn't invited. I didn't expect to be. But Emma did send me a text message afterward. A photo of her in a simple white dress, standing next to Marcus on the courthouse steps. She looked happy. Really happy. No message, just the photo. I took it as a kind of peace offering, and I didn't respond, but I saved the picture. My mother and I have not spoken since the wedding. I don't expect we ever will. Through my father, I learned that she had initially tried to spin the narrative, telling everyone I was mentally unstable, that I had made up the whole thing for attention. But Susan's presence at the wedding, and the documentation I had provided, made that story hard to maintain. Too many people had seen her lose control, had heard her call me names in church. The facade had cracked, and it couldn't be repaired. Within 3 months, my parents' position in Riverside society had shifted noticeably. They weren't pariahs, exactly, but they weren't included in the same circles anymore. The invitations dried up. The phone stopped ringing. My mother's carefully constructed world of appearances was crumbling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I pursued civil action against my mother for the stolen funds. Susan handled the case. It took almost a year, but we eventually reached a settlement. My mother was required to repay the full amount, $47,317, plus legal fees. The money came from my parents' retirement savings. My father called me when the check was issued, his voice heavy and old. "Rachel," he said. I don't know if you can ever forgive us. But I want you to know that I'm sorry. I didn't protect you. I should have. I didn't know what to say to that. I said, thank you for saying that, Dad. And then I said goodbye. My relationship with my father is complicated now. We talk occasionally, maybe once a month. He's still married to my mother, still living in that house on Maple Lane. I don't ask about her, and he doesn't volunteer information. Sometimes he sends me photos of his garden, or articles he thinks I might find interesting. I think he's trying, in his limited way, to build some kind of connection. I'm not sure if I'm ready to let him. But I haven't closed the door completely. Not yet. Emma and I are something like cordial. We text occasionally. She's pregnant now, I found out through our father. I sent a gift, a neutral gesture, a baby blanket in soft yellow. She sent back a thank you note, handwritten, which felt like progress. I don't know if we'll ever be close. But I don't feel the same burning resentment toward her that I once did. She was also shaped by our mother. She just happened to be shaped into a different role. The person who has become most important to me in the past year is, unexpectedly, Susan Chen. What started as a professional relationship evolved into something else. She invited me to coffee after our case concluded. Then dinner. Then coffee again. It turns out we have more in common than I initially realized. She grew up in a difficult family situation too. She understands, in a way that few people can, what it means to claw your way out of a system designed to keep you small. These days, we have dinner together at least once a week. She's become a mentor, a friend, a kind of chosen family. She was the one who encouraged me to tell this story, to put it all out there. She said it might help other people who are going through similar situations. I hope she's right. Or me, I'm doing okay. Better than okay, actually. With my savings restored and my legal case concluded, I was finally able to put a down payment on a house. Nothing fancy, a little Cape Cod in New Haven with a yard and a fireplace. But it's mine. Every inch of it is mine. I bought it with money I earned, and no one can take it from me. I still see Dr. Moore every few weeks. We're working on what she calls post-traumatic growth. Learning to trust again. Learning to believe that I deserve good things. It's slow work, but I'm getting there. I've made new friends. Good friends, people who like me for who I am, not for what I can provide. I've reconnected with old friends too, people I had pushed away when I was too consumed with family obligations to maintain other relationships. My world is smaller now, in some ways, but it's also fuller. Richer. More real. And for the first time in my 34 years, I feel like I'm living my own life. Not my mother's life. Not Emma's life. Mine. I want to share something with you that Dr. Moore said to me about a month ago. We were talking about my family, about all the years I had spent trying to earn love that was never really available to me. And she said, Rachel, you spent so long being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who always put others first. And that's not a flaw. That's a strength. But strength isn't valuable if it's only used in service of people who don't appreciate it. Real strength is choosing who deserves your loyalty. Real strength is walking away from people who take more than they give. Real strength is building a life that reflects your worth, even if you have to do it alone. I think about that a lot. About strength. About worth. About what it means to be truly free. If you're watching this video right now, there's probably a reason. Maybe you're in a situation similar to mine. Maybe you have a family member who takes and never gives back. Maybe you're the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who always has to sacrifice so someone else can shine. If that's you, I want you to know something. You're not selfish for wanting more. You're not ungrateful for setting boundaries. You're not a burden for having needs of your own. The people who truly love you will want you to thrive. They won't see your success as a threat to their own. They won't expect you to diminish yourself so they can feel bigger. I know it's scary to stand up for yourself. I know the fear of losing your family can feel like the scariest thing in the world. But here's what I learned: you can't lose something you never really had. If your family's love is conditional on your endless sacrifice, then it isn't love at all. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can start building a life with people who do actually love you. People who celebrate your wins. People who support your dreams. People who would never, ever steal from you. I'm finally free. It took 34 years, countless therapy sessions, one very dramatic wedding confrontation, and the courage to walk away from everything I thought I needed. But I'm finally, truly free. And you can be too. Thank you so much for staying with me through this story. If it resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from family members who were taking advantage of you? What helped you find the courage to set boundaries? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, remember this: you are worthy of love that doesn't come with conditions. You deserve to shine, too. Take care of yourselves.